Well, all I can say to start this show is I feel really bad for Eugenio Suarez. The Mariners got marine layered to death last night in a 4-1 loss to the Marlins. We'll talk about that and three pitchers that could make sense for Seattle at the deadline. All that and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, June 15th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head on over to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. We're going to talk about that heartbreaker last night at T-Mobile Park, of course. Mariners lose 4-1 to the Marlins. Rough outing for Luis Castillo, and the Mariners offense just absolutely robbed on several different occasions. We're also going to talk about three pitchers that Colby has identified. We're going to highlight those guys, talk about them a little bit. He thinks that they're at least interesting enough to discuss here on today's show, so we'll do that later on. But first, let's start with last night's game, and let's start with Luis Castillo. The headline here for Castillo: 6 walks, season high for him, over 5 2/3 innings pitched, just 2 earned runs, including a solo home run to Jorge Soler. 6 strikeouts as well for Castillo, and just 4 hard hit balls on the entire night. But the command just nowhere where it needs to be. So, Colby, what went wrong last night for Castillo?
Control and command. Like, that's the end of the story. There's nothing else. Stuff was fine. Got plenty of whiffs, got plenty of strikeouts in his 5 2/3. Velocity was there. Movement was there. Just couldn't control it. He couldn't command it. The fact that he only gave up 2 runs despite walking 6 is a testament to both how good the stuff is, but also how shallow the Marlins lineup is. You get past the first 3 or 4 guys, there's not a lot in the back end. So it's kind of a bummer on the one hand, because Castillo's kind of the guy that you expect to come in and you expect him to be shut down, especially against this lineup. But on the other hand, he only gave up 2 runs in 5 2/3, and that's more than good enough to win games like this. But unfortunately, the Mariners got a bit unlucky, and Castillo's pitch count got out of hand. Surprising, right, with the 6 walks. But stuff wise, he was fine. It's just, unfortunately, just didn't have a good feel for really anything. He was missing glove side a lot, and it was just not a good night, not a clean night for Castillo. And it's kind of a weird start for him, because again, stuff wise it was fine, and he only gave up a couple of hard hit balls, and he only gave up a couple runs, one of them coming on a wild pitch. Like, he was fine, but he also wasn't, because if you watch him, it was clear that he did not have his best control and command, and that he was really laboring to get through these innings. And so the fact that he was still able to get through nearly 6 on 100 pitches is good, I guess. It just kind of speaks to the level and the caliber of stuff that Castillo has, because I struggle to say he was bad last night, but also you definitely can't say he was good when you walk 6 guys. And if he does that against a better lineup than Miami, he's probably going to get shellacked. I think his next start comes at Yankee Stadium. We know how Castillo pitches against the Yankees, but if he has the same control and command, it's not going to go the way the other ones did. So something to watch. But overall, like, velocity was fine, stuff was fine, movement was fine. Just really couldn't dial in that outside corner. He missed glove side a lot.
Yeah, once again, command out of the stretch an issue for Castillo. Just mechanically all night just looked really off. But again, like you mentioned, he almost got out of this thing relatively unscathed. I mean, he did relatively unscathed, but even more so, I mean, he could easily have exited this game, obviously with 6 walks, but no earned runs allowed. He had 2 outs, working against Garrett Cooper before he threw the wild pitch. And then, he makes the one mistake to Soler. Really just 2 pitches, the difference for Castillo tonight in a start where, I mean, he was missing a lot. So to think that it really only came down to 2 pitches at the end of the day is pretty wild. But still, it's not good enough, from Castillo. You expect more. The expectations should be higher out of Castillo. And like you said, if he's going up against a better quality lineup, he's probably getting knocked around a bit more. That the earned run totals are probably a little bit higher than they were last night. But I also think that this is, of course, greatly emphasized by the fact that the Mariners just weren't able to really get much going against Yuri Perez on the other side of things either. Now, some of that not necessarily their fault, because they did have quite a few hard hit balls in this one. They did have quite a few balls that went to the warning track and just died. There was some great defense played by the Marlins as well. I mean, the Mariners easily could have put up 6-7 runs in this game. They end up only getting the 1, and that, really emphasizes the struggles of Castillo, who ends up, of course, taking the loss in this one. If there's anything else, is there anything else that you want to cover on Castillo before we move on to the offense, Colby?
No.
Okay. All right. So that, what needed to be said about Castillo is said, and hopefully he bounces back against the Yankees. I don't think this is really a concerning start for Castillo, who's been pretty dang good over his last few starts. Obviously, the Anaheim one, like we said yesterday, a little bit weird, but because of some things that were out of his hands as well. Overall, though, last 4 or 5 starts, he's been pretty dang good. So hopefully he bounces back against this Yankees ball club that's going to be without Aaron Judge, of course. So see how that goes. All right, so we're going to talk about this offense a little bit more. Eugenio Suarez just had a brutal night. Marlins played some great outfield defense, some annoyingly great outfield defense last night. Before we get into that, though, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Now, I hate shopping for summer clothes. I just want to be comfortable, no matter if I'm at the ballpark or back at home recording an episode of Locked On M's. Oftentimes, though, I find myself settling for clothes that feel cheap, tight, and restricting and make me sweat in all the wrong places. Gross, I know. Thankfully, Bird Dogs has me, and therefore you, covered. Their wide selection of insanely comfortable shorts, joggers, sweatpants, polos, and more have me ready for any occasion this summer throws my way. I mean, who doesn't love stretchy fabric and built-in underwear? It's time to look good, feel good, and play good this summer. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. It is June 15th, 2023, and your Seattle Mariners have an off day today, but they're going to get back after it tomorrow against the Chicago White Sox, the 3rd City Connect game of the season. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. So this Mariners offense, like I mentioned, couldn't really get anything going against Yuri Perez. He only gives up 2 hits over 6 innings pitched. But I also don't think it was as bad of a night for the Mariners offense as the box score would indicate, because they had quite a few hard hit balls. They had some great opportunities here to put runs on the board, and they were about a combined, 8 or so feet away from scoring 6 or 7 runs in this game. So I don't feel too bad about the offense. It was just insanely brutal to watch. And Colby, what was going through your head when Jesus Sanchez made that catch to rob Eugenio Suarez of that would-be game-tying grand slam?
Kind of knew it was going to happen. Just based on how the previous 8 innings had gone, it's like, yeah, that's going to die at the wall, or a bird's going to hit it or something. Like, it just no. It's really frustrating, especially for Gino, because he had a great night last night. He very easily could have had 3 home runs, and or at least a couple doubles and obviously a game tying grand slam. So yeah, it was a bummer for him. The Mariners offense as a whole, 46% hard hit rate last night.
Yeah.
Like that, it by itself should generate more than one run. And it just didn't really happen. Part of the issue last night is the Mariners didn't get on base. They didn't walk. They only had one walk, and I think that was the first batter of the game, JP Crawford, and they didn't walk again. Strikeouts were actually okay. They had 9 strikeouts, 3 of them from Kelenic, who probably needs to move down the order. He's in a rough spot right now. We saw him, it's starting to leak into the defense a little bit. We saw him lose a fly ball last night. Thankfully, Gino bailed him out. But it's been a rough go for Kelenic, who struck out 3 more times last night. He probably needs to be moved behind Gino at this stage. And hey, you know what? Also having a good game last night, Cal Raleigh, kind of back-to-back good games. He had 2 hits last night and hit a screaming line drive in his last at-bat that, of course, was right at a Marlins outfielder. So, yeah, Raleigh had a nice game last night. Gino had a nice game last night. Teoscar had a couple hard hit balls. He did have the double that landed for him. But ultimately they just didn't walk. They didn't get on base. They only had 4 hits. And a lot of bad luck, but not a ton of opportunities to where they could even string hits together and kind of, counteract that bad luck. So it happens sometimes. Sometimes you do everything right and the ball just goes right to a guy, or the guy makes a great play. But yeah, I don't know. I saw somebody say like the Marlins outfield saved like 9 runs last night. It's like, I don't know about 9, but certainly they saved at least 3 or 4, and that's the difference of the ball game. So it's just a bummer, it really is, because you're riding high on these really good vibes, and the ball club comes out, and it's not even that they play terribly. They just get really unlucky at really bad times, and you lose a series, and now you have to go into an off day on a loss instead of a sweep. And it's just, this is the kind of stuff that it feels like you're dealing with every other day with this ball club. Just they either play poorly after they play well for a couple days, or they get unlucky like this, and you're just like, man, we're trying to get on a run here, and these stupid little things keep getting in our way. So yeah, it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, the Mariners take 2 of 3 from the team with the second or third best record in the National League right now. It's a pretty good series win, but it also didn't make last night sting. In the immediate aftermath of that 9th inning, it didn't make it sting any less for a little while.
So I have some, fun numbers here for the Mariners over the last 9 days since that Tuesday win against the Padres last week. Mm-hmm. They're 3rd right now in the American League in hard hit rate as a team, 44.4% hard hit rate. They're also 5th in the American League in barrel percentage at 11.7%. They are currently 3rd in walk percentage in the American League at 9.9%. By the way, a lot of AL West teams on these lists. Oakland is leading quite a few of these categories, by the way. Of course, they've won 8 in a row. They've been playing some really good baseball out of nowhere. The Mariners are also 5th in on base percentage in the American League right now over the last 9 days. So again, even with nights like last night, they're still, as overall as an offense, putting up some much better numbers. The process overall just looks better. The product on the field, I mean, you can even just go by your eyes. It just looks better. So, hopefully this loss isn't too much of a bump in the road, and they can get back on track, starting tomorrow against a White Sox team that they can certainly win a series or even sweep. So, all right. Moving on. This is the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Again, you can catch the Mariners and the White Sox this weekend on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Let's talk about trades. It's trade a day time. Colby, you had this idea for yesterday's show. We ended up talking about Cody Bellinger though, but we're gonna talk about this now. And guys, we see all of your comments. We know that you guys want to talk about bats, and we're probably going to talk about bats quite a bit here over the next few trade days. But let us get some pitching out of our system here. But I see some of your comments. I see the Jock Petersons. I see the Michael Confortos. I see all that. We'll cover those guys in due time. But Colby, you have 3 pitchers that you want to talk about. You want to highlight here.
Yeah, we're not going to highlight either of those two guys, though. They both suck, and those ideas are dumb.
Sure,
But they're totally not on my list. But
definitely. No.
yeah, no, we talked about Eduardo Rodriguez the other day, and we talked about why he may or may not be that great of a fit. There's a lot of unique things that you have to talk about when you're talking about Rodriguez: the injury, the opt out. How many starts is he worth? He's probably going to cost a ton. Blah blah blah. And I was just thinking, there's probably 3 alternatives that could make sense in the short term for a short term fix, and a couple of them are actually former Mariners. So I thought maybe that might be a nice little, you know, companion book, I guess, to the Eduardo Rodriguez discussion. So do you want me to name all 3, or do you want me to go one at a time?
Let's go one at a time, and let's keep people on the edge of their seats here and keep guessing who the former Mariners could be. Let's start with the non-former Mariner.
Yeah, so the St. Louis Cardinals have the worst record in the National League. Say that out loud.
Wait, in the in the entire National
I'm
League?
Pretty sure, yeah. Last time I
what?
checked, I'm pretty sure.
Oh no, they're 1 game better than the Nationals.
Okay, so there you
go. Actually, maybe not, because they have 1 more win, but they have 2 more losses.
So they're tied, I think, with the Nationals.
Okay.
So yeah, the St. Louis Cardinals suck, which not something you hear that often. But as a result, they're probably going to be sellers, and they do have a couple pending free agents that are pitchers, and St. Louis really doesn't re-sign their guys. They typically just continue to develop and replace from within, and they don't pay guys, for free agent
Miles
years,
Michaelis would like a word, Colby.
Yeah, that's worked out great.
Yeah.
But they do have a couple guys, and I know Jack Flaherty is kind of the easy one, and he's a guy that we've talked about, last winter and blah blah blah. But actually, I think Jordan Montgomery is the guy who makes a lot of sense here. It's kind of Marco-y. It's a lefty, not overpowering stuff, but he does get strikeouts. He's just under a strikeout per inning. Doesn't walk guys, which is good. That's what you want out of a number 5. Ground ball rate's fine. You kind of look at the numbers overall, and he's just kind of a average number 4 starter. Like, there's nothing spectacular here. There's nothing that you're going to extract that the Yankees or the Cardinals haven't been able to get out of him yet. And it is just a 2-month rental. He is a free agent after this year. If Marco is healthy, Montgomery just feels redundant. Montgomery is better than Marco. How much better? That's kind of up for debate. And so that's why really all 3 of these guys, they depend so much on, is Marco healthy? And do you trust his health going forward? If the answer is no, all 3 of these guys make a tremendous amount of sense. If the answer is yes, then maybe not. But I think Montgomery is a pretty good fit for the ballpark. I think he's a pretty solid pitcher, and I think his cost will be fairly reasonable, considering what the market's going to look like in July.
Montgomery's interesting. Again, though, like you mentioned, right? My biggest hang up here is, how much better is he than Marco? Is it actually worth giving up whatever it's going to cost? Is that marginal upgrade really all that worth it? All right, who's next on your list?
Yeah, we'll go with the name I'm sure people are thinking of right now. How about James Paxton? Bring it back, the Big Maple.
The Big Maple.
Yeah. He's throwing the ball really well for Boston right now. We know he works in the city. We know he works in this clubhouse. We know he works with his staff. We know he works in the ballpark. Like, he's a great fit from all those perspectives, and he's throwing the ball really well right now. Boston is kind of sliding down the standings. They're in a really tough division. And so we'll see if they actually end up selling, but even if they're kind of fringy on it, they might consider taking advantage of Paxton, who is throwing the ball really well and might be one of the better arms available at the deadline. The issue with the Mariners acquiring James Paxton is the issue with anybody acquiring James Paxton. How many starts are you going to get out of him? Because acquiring an injury-prone starter to replace your injured starter, that's kind of asking for trouble, especially when you do not have that kind of break glass in case of emergency starter, because you're going to use up Woo's innings by the time you acquire Paxton. Hancock maybe has a couple innings left, but that's not great. And if Marco is hurt to the point where you don't think he can start and Paxton gets hurt, you're probably rolling with Darren McCacken in a playoff race, which I'm telling you right now is not going to go that well. So that's the issue. You get a ton of upside with Paxton. He might be, he's a mid-rotation arm right now still. But for how long? How many pitches are you going to get out of Paxton before he heads to the IL? It's tough to say. And obviously, everybody in Seattle loves James and rightfully so. Great dude who's having a really good year. And obviously when he's healthy, he's one of the best lefties in baseball. Are you willing to risk it? Are you willing to risk a pretty decent prospect to go get Paxton for 2 months, hopefully for 2 months? Are you trading Cade Marlowe for that? Are you trading?
Oh yeah, I would.
Are you trading?
I would without hesitation trade.
Are you
Cade
trading
Marlowe.
Walter Ford for that? Are you trading Ashton Izzy for that?
Are you telling me it's a pick between the Vanilla Missile and the Big Maple?
Kind of. That's probably about what it would take. It's going to be a competitive market, especially if he keeps pitching like this. So, it's not, you're not going to get him for like Caden Polkovich. You know what I mean? Like you're going to have to ante up with probably a top 15 prospect.
Yeah, he's having a nice year. It's been 6 starts, just 32 innings, but he's striking out nearly 12 and a half guys per 9 right now. His walk rate is the lowest that it's been since his last year in Seattle before getting traded to New York.
Nobody has ever denied that James Paxton is a fantastic pitcher.
Yeah.
You just can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
Now you only need him to stay healthy for 2 months.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable that he's doing this though. First year back thrown at the major league level since, his injury in early 2021. Like he's not just like getting by, he's dominating right now. It's pretty impressive.
It is, but
I just feel like,
how much do you trust him?
Well, I feel like it will get to a point where it's too expensive relative to the risk that's involved here. So I think there will be a team that takes a chance on him this summer. I just don't know if that's going to be the Mariners. I don't know if the Mariners are going to find themselves in a position where that makes sense for them.
Right. Because, you got to be pretty sure you're going to get a playoff start out of him, or you're going to get a big, big start in late September out of him to justify it. Because the Red Sox very well maybe like give us Gabby Gonzalez, give us, Walter Ford, give us, Michael Arroyo, like give us Laz Montes, give us one of these guys that's 5 years away to help you now. And while that seems ridiculous on the surface, sometimes pitching at the deadline costs that much, especially if the guy's throwing really well like Paxton is. So,
well, again, we don't know who exactly is going to be available this deadline.
We don't even know for sure Boston's selling. So
we don't know. We don't know if Eduardo Rodriguez is going to get dealt or not.
Yeah.
We
don't know if Stroman's going to get dealt. So we'll see. I think he's definitely somebody you should consider, but I think, based on all the factors and, really the only factor that matters is how much do you trust him to be healthy down the stretch.
Yeah.
You might want to look elsewhere, but I think Paxton would be a lot of fun if they brought him in, obviously. And we know how well, how much he likes the city and the team and the fan base and all that stuff. But it's about more than that. It's about the ball club and winning games. So would Paxton help you do that? Yes.
Can you trust him to do it? Yeah.
If he's healthy. You never know. You never know when he's going to go out there and he's going to have to get pulled in the second. And now your bullpen is screwed for the next 2 days because you had to cover those innings. It's risky, man. It's risky.
So before we get to your last guy, we're trying to send JP Crawford to the All-Star game. Help us out. Hashtag JP for ASG. Send us your All-Star game ballot voting for JP. And you're automatically entered into our next giveaway. Colby's giving away a signed Luis Castillo card, and that could be yours. And all you have to do is vote for JP Crawford into the All-Star game. You can send your ballot to us on Twitter at LO_Mariners or via email at lockedonmariners@gmail.com. So, yeah. All right. Last guy on the list, Colby. Who is it? Who is your mystery man?
Sure. It's a guy who I've liked for a long time and was very excited when the Mariners first acquired him.
Mm,
Unfortunately, thanks to
mm,
Jim Leland, he never threw a pitch for the Seattle
mm.
Mariners. The famous Mr. Soggy Arm himself, Drew Smyly of the Chicago Cubs. A lot of focus on Marcus Stroman. Let me just say right now, no. Never going to happen, and not sure it should. But Drew Smyly, kind of interesting. Here's the thing with Smyly, not a rental. He did get a 2-year deal in the offseason. So you do get him for an extra year. The nice thing about Smyly is that you can kind of slide him into the bullpen. He works out of the bullpen as well, which is a plus when you're talking about going to a 4-man rotation in a playoff series, or if, so and so Marco gets healthy in August and you like him more, Smyly plays up more in the bullpen than Marco would. It's pretty simple. It's fastball, cutter, curveball, mostly curveball. You saw Smyly pitch against the Mariners in April. He almost threw a perfect game, if not for a hilarious collision, let's call it, with his catcher. He has
I forgot about that until you just said that.
He's slowed down a bit recently, but he's still been pretty darn good. He's a number 4 starter. None of these guys are top of the rotation. None of these guys you're giving the ball to start a playoff game over your big 3 right now. And they'd probably be it'd probably be a toss up between this person and Miller to start a game 4 if there was one. So yeah, it's not, none of these guys are exciting, but all of these guys help, but all these guys come with their own concerns. Smyly has an injury history of his own, as we know. Now he's been relatively durable the last 2 years. And so far he's made all of his starts this year. So you feel better about his health than you do Paxton. The trade-off is that obviously Paxton carries a significantly higher upside than Smyly. So Smyly also probably going to cost more. That's a bit up in the air. Because again, you do get him for an extra year.
He also has a mutual option in 2025.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, like, it's going to cost a little bit more money. He's not significantly better than a lot of rentals. The Mariners don't necessarily need a pitcher with multiple years of club control. So which one of these 3 would make the most sense for you, Ty? Like, how would you prioritize these 3? Just heads up, because obviously if you can get Cody Bellinger and Drew Smyly in the same deal, then maybe you prioritize Smyly. Or maybe you get Verdugo and Paxton in the same deal, then you would prioritize Paxton. But how would you?
You're not gonna get me to say no to James Paxton on the show. I'm sorry. So James Paxton is number 1. Has to be.
Ty's just out here, doesn't even care about the playoffs. He just wants James Paxton on the Mariners.
Well, again, you bring it up with Smyly as well. Smyly hasn't been the most durable guy. He's been more durable than Paxton as of late. But
yeah, okay. He's not the most durable guy in the world. I want James Paxton.
No. I'm just saying, like, if you want me to compare the two, I'm just like, look, I would probably go with the upside play here, and that's James Paxton, because I think that Paxton could start a playoff game for me if he's healthy. Again, that's the big key. That is, I get that. We can say that until the cows come home, but just on paper, I think James Paxton can actually start and win me a playoff game. Drew Smyly, I don't think that. Jordan Montgomery, I don't think that. I really don't.
Montgomery and Smyly both been pretty solid this year.
They have been.
Pretty much their entire careers. So,
I mean, yeah, could it happen? But I think I don't know. I think Paxton gives me the best chance in October. So
does he? Because what happens when he pulls something in the second inning?
Okay,
after
again, we
pitches?
can say that we can injury concern all day long, but
we really can't, though. Like, not as much as we can with Paxton. Like, are you, like, you're telling me, like, anytime Bryce Miller or Logan Gilbert goes out there, you're like, uh-oh, he's shaking his arm. This might be it. He's done. No, because I'll tell you what, anytime James Paxton walks to the back of the mound after throwing a pitch, everybody in Seattle holds their collective breath because they think, oh, great, there goes the UCL. By the way, has James Paxton ever had Tommy John? Or is it just like shoulder and like non-Tommy John elbow? Like, it's so weird. But
hold on.
I don't know if he's ever actually had Tommy John surgery.
I'm doubting myself now. No, he had it. He had it in 2021 after the
After he got pulled in the second inning after 21 pitches. What? James Paxton doing that? No, never.
Okay,
It's risky, man.
You've
It's
said
risky.
enough. You have besmirched my boy long enough.
Whoa. First of all, you can't claim James Paxton. He's like
I
Julio.
can. I was
He
at his no hitter.
belongs to everybody.
I was at his
Okay?
no hitter and met him the
You
next day.
stick
So
to claiming Dylan Moore like the
I
bum
get
you
to
are.
claim. I get to
No,
claim
you
James
do
Paxton.
not.
I get to
He
claim
is
James
for
Paxton.
everybody, just like Julio. You keep claiming Teoscar Hernandez and Dylan Moore. I'll give you those two.
Yeah, I'm going James Paxton still.
All right. Well, then the more important question is who's number 2? Because obviously you're not going to be, serious about this exercise. Smiley over Montgomery. Interesting. Okay.
I'm not going to be serious about this exercise. I
Come
legitimately.
You
think
would
that,
not rather have James Paxton for 2 months than
yes.
No.
I would.
No,
I would.
because I'm not
I
guaranteeing
absolutely,
health. No.
I
No.
absolutely would. I absolutely
You know what? We'll compromise, Ty. Trade for Alex Verdugo.
You
and
just
James
want
Paxton.
Drew Smiley. You just want to live out your Drew Smiley dream.
Actually, Jordan Montgomery would be my number 1.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Montgomery, Paxton, Smiley.
All right. I mean, at least you have Paxton too. That's good enough.
My mind. Dead last.
Okay. Yeah. Now that I said something.
Sure.
Of course. Yeah. No, the Smiley and the club control is attractive because I mean, you still have the Robbie Ray problem, right?
Yep.
Who knows what Marco's future is in Seattle beyond this year?
Surgery for Marco. You got 2 spots to fill, and you don't have 2 arms that you feel like. Maybe you feel okay about Wu being one of those arms, but do you feel good about the second one being Hancock at this stage? You probably need
like for this year,
for next year. Like
2
if Marco
spots?
has to get Tommy, yeah, because you'll have you have Ray and you have Marco.
Yeah, but you have Castillo, Gilbert,
right? Miller takes Marco.
Kirby, Miller.
Yeah, and then so you have to have Miller takes Ray, and then you have. Do you feel good about Wu taking Marco? Do you feel good about Hancock taking Marco's spot? Do you feel good about the other guy staying healthy? Do you not need a number 6 because it's not going to be Chris Flexen? Please, like, good Lord.
Yeah.
After the All-Star Game campaign, we're starting drop flex. 2023. Dude's not good.
We're gonna get toxic out here.
He is not a major league quality pitcher. Fact. He's not. Get him off of my roster. I don't care. No, what are you gonna do if Wu gets hurt? Blah blah blah. I will literally pull up anybody from AAA and I will get better results than I will from Chris Flexen. I will finally pull up Jake Shiner and let him start before I let Chris Flexen make another start.
There we go. I'm on board with that.
Mariners.
I'm on board with that.
Not. Get him off my roster.
You know what? Let Jake Shiner pitch. That's the new campaign.
Sure, he's got a better shot of succeeding as a pitcher than he does a hitter at the major league level anyway, so why not?
God. Wow. You're so mean to Jake Shiner.
Mostly just to you.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for our show. Again, White Sox, Mariners, that's happening tomorrow. That's happening this weekend. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. Follow me at Dane Gonzalez, the CANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. We'll be back tomorrow. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.